Most home gardens fail at the one thing that really matters. They don't produce enough food to make it efficient. You can spend months watering, maintaining, fertilising, but you still end up in the supermarket. It's not because you're a bad gardener. It's that most people aren't really shown how to grow for yield, consistency, and efficiency. After 40 years of working in horticulture, one thing is very clear. There's a fundamental difference between a garden that looks good and a garden that actually functions as a food production system. You'll find that most gardens are designed around appearance, variety, and convenience. If your goal is to produce food consistently, then your methods have to change. If you want your garden to feed you, even partially, you need to shift how you think. It's not what do I feel like growing or what will look good in my garden. It's what produces the most usable food per square metre over time. Because here's a reality backed by simple agronomy. Yield is a function of plant selection, spacing efficiency, soil fertility, and environmental control. Ignore any one of these and your output will decrease accordingly. And most gardens are only 90% efficient. Even a small garden can feed you and your family, but only if it's designed efficiently. You don't need more space. What you do need is higher yields per square metre, continuous harvest cycles, and plants that actually give something back. Otherwise, you're just growing fancy garnish. And this is where most people go wrong. They focus on what they can see. Leaves, foliage, nice green colour. But the real limiting factor is happening right underground. You can even plant the right crops during the right season and still get poor results. Because if your soil isn't right, plants will never reach full production. Not 100%, not even close. All roots, plant roots, need oxygen, structure, and access to nutrients. Any of these missing, your yield will drop significantly. And you know what? Most gardeners don't even know what's happening. Now, a well-managed 10 square metre garden patch can produce a surprising amount of food, but only if it's managed properly. But this depends on planting intensity and proper crop recycling. For example, leafy greens can be harvested every 3 to 5 weeks. Root crops like carrots, beetroots can take up to 8 to 12 weeks. Other crops like tomatoes require months, but they do produce continuously. If you don't stagger and layer these appropriately, you're going to get gaps. There'll be periods where your garden isn't flourishing and all you've got is empty garden beds scattered here and there. There'll be periods where your garden just doesn't produce anything at all. This is simply a waste of space. And it's where most gardens just simply fall apart. Oftentimes you'll see plants planted too far apart, other times congested too closely together. Large areas of unused soil, single harvest crops with no succession. From a production standpoint, that's just simply inefficient. In commercial horticulture, every single square metre is expected to produce. At home, most people are operating at a fraction of that capacity. But even if you fix the space and you plant all the right crops, there's a deeper issue that may limit everything, and it's completely out of sight because most times plants don't fail from the top up. They usually fail from the root zone. Soil isn't just something that plants sit in. It's a dynamic environment. It's a system made up of mineral particles like sand, silt, clay, organic matter, air spaces, water, and many living microorganisms. So what matters most is structure, and it depends on how all these combine and are arranged that makes all the difference. This structure eventually determines oxygen availability, water retention and drainage, and root penetration. If any of these are missing, you can consider your garden a failure. Roots are just not anchors. They absorb water and they absorb nutrients. They exchange gases, especially oxygen. They interact with soil microbes. In a well-structured soil, roots expand freely and they access nutrients efficiently. But in poor soil, such as clay for example, they become compacted, waterlogged, or biologically inactive. If the roots struggle, the plant will struggle. That equals no yield. And the most common limiting factors, and I've seen this for decades, compaction restricts root growth and oxygen. Poor drainage creates anaerobic conditions. Low organic matter reduces nutrient holding capacity. And the worst of all is the pH balance. Get that wrong, and it doesn't matter how much fertilizer you pour on your plants, the roots won't accept it. They won't benefit. This is what's called nutrient lockdown. I've spoken about that in other videos only because it's a very important factor and a very common cause of garden failures. I've seen a lot of common gardening advice on how to fix this and how to fix that. A lot of it doesn't work in the long term. Most of those focus on feeding the plant, sorting out the symptoms, reacting to problems, instead of addressing the root environment. Roots are the foundation of any plant. If they're not happy, your plant won't be happy. So if the root environment is wrong, everything else becomes a short-term fix. If you want a garden that consistently produces food, you have to think in systems, not in individual plants. Things like soil health, production, because once the system is right, production becomes predictable. Many people fail right from the get-go, unknowingly, before they even plant their first seed, because they're starting with soil that cannot support consistent production. Before you plant anything, your soil determines everything. How much food you grow, how often you harvest. In my next video, I'm going to show you how to assess your soil correctly and fix it so that it supports food production efficiently. If you've watched on this far, I'd just like to let you know that I've got a few upcoming videos that you might be interested in. I'll be producing a video that highlights the different types of roots found on trees. If you care about your home, your surroundings, and even your neighbour's property, then you'll find both informative and entertaining. Not all trees are equal. Some trees, many in fact, should never ever be planted close to home. Trees like the ones I will be revealing have the ability to destroy your home not only in the short term, but in the long term. I'll show you trees that you should never ever plant close to home. Along with that, I'll show you user-friendly trees, great trees that would love to settle in to a family environment and become a productive part of your life. Subscribe now so that you can stay notified about my upcoming videos. I'll be especially discussing lemon trees and other citrus trees. These have fibrous roots. I'll also reveal a whole bunch of trees that are user-friendly, even in small minimal spaces, can be grown close to home and will never interact with foundations or anything. In addition, I've got another upcoming video planned which will be conducted outdoors. I'll show you how you can prune a non-dwarf nectarine tree and set it up so that it can grow and produce fruit in a pot. Great for people with minimal spaces, and you've also got a portable tree that you can take with you anywhere. Watch out for my next videos. Thanks for watching.